Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home. This year I'm taking a little bit of a different approach to how I put my garden beds to bed for the winter. So I hope you join us. So we're entering the second week of December, and after the most gorgeous fall, where I have to admit I got a little complacent because the weather was so great, I was like, oh, let's keep this going. Well, then last week we're hit by quite a bit of cold, and we went from frost to freeze the very next day. And so needless to say, I hadn't properly put my gardens to bed. However, I've kind of shifted my thinking a little bit in how I'm going to do that this year. We're supposed to get a little bit of a warm up in the next week or two heading into Christmas, so it'll get me out in the garden again, because if you follow me, you know I am a fair weather gardener. I'll admit it. So anyway, let me show you what I haven't done yet, and what I plan to do, and then things that I'm going to just kind of let go. So here is the bed where I have all of this celery, and my sauce tomatoes were growing this year. And right before the frost came, I mean right before, like half an hour before sunset, I came out here and I harvested all of the green tomatoes, which are now ripening very nicely on my countertop. But what I normally like to do is cut all this debris down and then compost all of the leaves and the branches. I cut at soil height like that, and then what I do is I cover the middle of the bed with some plastic row cover, as you know, just to give it some frost protection. Now, we haven't had deep freezes. I think it was 28 was the lowest we got over the course of a day or two, or a night or two. So these don't look any really worse for wear, the celery here and this fennel. But I am going to put a row cover just to protect the tiny seedlings in the middle here, when I think that we're going to get really low, like maybe in the teens. And this bed here where I had the eggplant, and then this was a tomato plant, there's a little bit growing in here over the winter. I've got some carrots in here and some dill over there, and I think where the bare ground is, I'm just going to cover it over with some leaves to mulch it. The carrots and the dill are very cold tolerant. They probably don't need any covering at all, but I'm going to do that to protect the soil. And here in the medicinal herb bed, these are perennials, most of them, except for the calendula. And they don't really need much protection either. They'll overwinter, but again, to protect the soil itself, I'm just going to fill in there with some leaves as mulch. St. Francis's garden over here is a bed full of spring bulbs, and last year I put down mesh to prevent squirrels from digging up the bulbs. Well, through the summer there was some digging going on. I'm just going to leave this the way it is. I'm probably going to throw some leaves over here too. And my little teepee that I made for the fall is going to make a great mulch for that purpose. The rose plants, I didn't do anything to last year. I didn't cover them or move them up to the house like I usually would have done, and they were fine. So I'm just going to leave them here, and I'm going to try to keep this little water feature, little water fountain here, filled with fresh water through the winter, because it's not easy for birds to get fresh water when the ground is frozen. Just a fig named Sue. Figs need a little bit of cold stratification to come back healthier in the spring. I'm not going to keep this out here if it goes down to the teens or even low 20s. I'm going to be bringing it in shortly. So I'm going to leave it out here until it gets colder. In these grow bags here, everything has been pulled up. I had a horrible sweet potato harvest. I have 2 grow bags left with potatoes, and I'm going to be harvesting them before the ground really freezes, because potatoes can stay in the ground like this, almost as cold storage until you need them. The blueberry bush and the butterfly bush, they'll be fine. They've overwintered a couple of years in a row now. The calendula, although it's very cold hardy, did get hit with that frost. As you can see, they're a little whimpery looking, but I'm actually going to leave these in the ground, root and all, throughout the winter as a mulch. There's so much of it. It's good ground cover. It'll leave roots in the ground for the winter. So I'm going to do it in this bed and also along here. I'm just going to leave them there. But what I'm going to do with the tomatoes is the same thing I'm going to do with the sauce tomatoes in the other bed. Is I'm going to cut them down, but I'm just going to leave, I'm going to chop and drop them. So I'm just going to leave branches, leaves and all underneath them, and let that mulch give back to the ground the nutrients that they absorbed by growing there over the summer. I was going to leave this up throughout the winter for the birds to eat the seed heads, but it's getting in my way of opening that door. So I'm going to chop this back. I might not pull it completely, but I'm going to chop it back. Well, the wall of beans is completely dead now, as you can see. I'm leaving, though, some pods on here to completely dry. And they're almost ready for me to bring in. And I'm doing that to save the beans inside. But I'm going to then pull all of this down and just use it as mulch right here in this bed. And the peppers too, I'm just going to chop them down and drop them exactly where they were planted. I'm going to dig out the tuber of the canna plant here. It never bloomed for me, but I think maybe it's because I planted it too late. Also, it might not have liked this spot very much. So I'm going to dig that out, and I'm going to kind of dry it off, put it in a paper bag in the dark, in the cool, and I'm going to let that winter inside and then replant them again in the spring. And I'm going to do the same for my dahlia plant here. I'm going to just dig up the tubers and bring them inside in a paper bag. Inside the tunnels here, I have brassicas, some of which were eaten very badly by some sluggy looking wormy things, although this cauliflower looks like it's starting to head up. But I'm just going to keep them in here. There's a bok choy in the back there. I'm just going to keep them in here through the winter covered, and hopefully in the spring the ones that are still in the ground will make a comeback, and maybe I'll be able to get a cauliflower. In this tunnel is mostly Chinese cabbage and bok choy, and I had a great meal with this Chinese cabbage. I made a terrific stir fry about 2 weeks ago, and they're starting to grow back. Again, I'm just going to leave them under here all winter. In amongst the weeds here, I have tiny carrot seedlings, and I'm going to mulch over them with a light covering of leaves. Not enough to smother them, but hopefully to keep the weeds from getting worse. And over here I have borage that's just self-seeded, and turnips. So I'm probably not going to cover these over for the winter. I think that they'll be fine. The geraniums have had it. I know there's a way to save geraniums if I wanted to dig them up and bring them inside. And you put those in a brown paper bag as well. But I'm not going to bother with the geraniums. I'll just, I'll get a new plant next year, maybe something a little bit different. But actually, as of last week, I had some strawberries here I was picking. Got some still trying to grow. But what I do is I take this cedar from the cedar trees that we have, and I just use that as a mulch. It's light enough to let the water through. Strawberries are very frost hardy, but they can use a little bit of something. So it's like a light blanket. I moved some of the herb containers inside the greenhouse just for a little extra protection. They're cold hardy. We've got dill, lemon balm, sage. Down here is a bunch of parsley seedlings and cilantro. And here we've got chives and thyme and rosemary. And unfortunately, my plastic's not zipping up anymore, which has been okay when it's in the high 20s. That's Fahrenheit. But once it gets much lower, this is going to be a problem, and I'm going to have to get a new cover for this or figure out some way to fasten it closed. This oregano container has never been covered, and it's always been outside and overwintered. The same with the thyme plant there. The cold definitely got the basil. I had 6 different types of basil growing here throughout the summer. I was very lucky. We had such a long fall because I was harvesting really up until Thanksgiving. But, you know, these have all died back. I have some volunteer herb seedlings growing. I've got lemon balm and dill and parsley growing. These were just because they were underneath where those plants had gone to flower. And I'm not going to cover them. I'm going to see if they'll just continue to grow through the winter. And I'm going to obviously cut back these plants that are dead because they look terrible. And what I would like to do before the ground freezes is I'd like to plant in the ground these chrysanthemums. They'll come back. They're hardy mums, but only if they're put in the ground. If you leave them in the pot, they don't really make it. So that's the list of things that I'd like to get done before the temperatures drop dramatically. But quite honestly, I'm just going to prioritize with the things that kind of will need to be rescued, as opposed to what can just be fine if I don't do anything with them. And I think that that's the difference this year than a couple of years in the past, where I ran around like a crazy person trying to save everything. If certain flowers die, or some of the perennials don't make it, or if the celery doesn't make it, I'll live, and in the spring we'll just start again. So weather permitting, I'll be out here doing these tasks, but weather not permitting, I probably won't be. So I hope this video kind of inspired you to put things in a little bit of perspective. Although if you're not like me, you've already put your entire garden to bed, and you're nice and cozy by your fireplace getting ready for Christmas and sipping cocoa. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. And I hope you subscribe and join our growing community. And from the Ladies Garden Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye! Bye.